Chapter 4. A New Flag. To pay off money that John owed, it would not be easy to run a business alone. Find new customers, pay the bills, and order supplies. She had to do all the sewing work herself, but Betsy had watched her great-aunt Sarah run her own business, so she thought she could do it too. The war turned out to be good news for Betsy's business. As people in Philadelphia prepared to fight, they needed the very things she was good at making. Soldiers needed blankets and bedding, armies needed cots and tents, and everyone needed flags. Each unit of the growing colonial army required its own flag. Each colony had its own flag too. Even ships flew flags. They were all different, and each had to be made by hand. Betsy's sewing skills were perfect for this job. The flags had to look great, but they also had to be sturdy to wave in any weather. In the spring of 1776, there was not one flag to represent all the colonies. Several different flags had been used by American troops in battles. Most had taken parts of the British flag, which was red, white, and blue. Some of the leaders of the colonies wanted what they were starting to call the United States to have a flag all its own, one that everyone could rally behind. Early colonial flags. Colonies had their own flags, but most also used the flag of Great Britain, known as the Union Jack. During the Revolutionary War, however, a new flag designs were created to support the cause of liberty. Culpeper Minutemen, 1775, flown by citizen soldiers in Virginia. It showed a rattlesnake and the words, "Don't tread on me." Washington's cruisers, 1775. This flag showed a pine tree, which was popular on flags in New England. It was flown on boats and used by George Washington. Around the tree it read, "An appeal to heaven." Grand Union, 1775. Washington helped design this flag, which included the Union Jack in the corner, but also had the now familiar 13 red and white stripes. Washington's personal flag. A blue flag with 13 six-pointed white stars flew over Washington's camps throughout the war. Bunker Hill flag, 1775. All red except for a pine tree on the upper left. The flag was first flown during the Battle of Bunker Hill in 1775. There is a great American legend that Betsy Ross sewed the very first American flag. Is it true? Her family says so. It's a story that's become a part of the country's early history. Nearly 100 years after the beginning of the Revolutionary War, Betsy's family told this story. 3 men visited Betsy at her Philadelphia shop. One was George Ross, John's uncle. He knew Betsy and was aware of her skill at sewing. George Ross had been part of the First Continental Congress and a leader in the colonies. The second man was another colonial leader, Robert Morris. He was a very rich man who helped raise money to pay for the colonists' fight. The third man, according to the story, was George Washington. George Washington. Born in Virginia in 1732, George Washington expected to enjoy a life as a gentleman farmer. His leadership skills and his belief in freedom led him on a very different path. After working as a surveyor in the lands that Britain hoped to add to its Virginia colony, Washington served in the British Army. He fought in a war against the French settlers from Canada. After that war, he returned to life on his large farm. But he grew troubled by what Britain was doing to its colonies. He joined the Assembly in Virginia and was sent to the First Continental Congress. His military experience made him the natural choice to lead the new Continental Army. General Washington led the army throughout the Revolutionary War. He made bold decisions and turned a motley crew of colonial soldiers into a winning army. It took 6 years, but the Americans defeated the larger British force and won the war. The treaty that officially ended the conflict was signed in 1783. Hailed as a national hero, Washington became the country's first president in 1789. The same strong leadership and belief in freedom that had made him a great general helped him organize the many different parts of the new nation. Working with Congress, he formed the laws and structures that still govern the nation. After 2 terms as president, he left office in 1797. Washington died 2 years later, but remains the father of our country. In 1776, Washington was the leader of the new Continental Army. When they visited Betsy's shop, the 3 men brought a sketch of a flag. They needed to have a sample made. Betsy showed them a few ways to make it better. Then the men had drawn a square flag. Betsy told them that the flag should be longer. Their sketch showed 13 red and white stripes. There was 1 stripe for each of the 13 colonies. Betsy showed them how she could sew those stripes together. A blue square in the upper left corner had stars. The stars each had 6 points. Betsy looked at the stars and realized she had a better way. She folded a piece of paper 8 times, made 1 snip with her scissors, and showed the men a 5-pointed star. Betsy said that making stars this way would be faster and easier. Washington and the other men liked what she showed them. They left Betsy with some money to buy fabric. They asked her to make a sample of this new flag to show Congress. While Betsy worked on her flag, the Continental Congress was debating the terms of the Declaration of Independence. The leaders of the colonies said that no nation should rule another. They wrote that all men are created equal, and that no one could take away their rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Declaration listed the many things that King George and Great Britain had done to the colonies. It ended by declaring that the colonies are free and independent states. The Declaration was approved on July 4th, 1776, which is now known as Independence Day. Copies were carried throughout the colonies and read to bigger and bigger crowds of people. 4 days later, Betsy was probably among the thousands who heard it read aloud on the streets of Philadelphia. A year later, on June 14, 1777, Congress passed a law that the flag of the United States would look like the one described in the story about Betsy Ross. But did she really sew the first flag? Historians have found no evidence to support the family's story, although there is no concrete proof Betsy did spend many of the rest of her working years making flags, which many were indeed the Stars and Stripes.